Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. Now a few videos back you may have seen that I did a car called Project Minor Threat for RetroPower. I took a Pendle slot racing resin kit and I turned it into RetroPower's Project Minor Threat, and in that video I took all my slot car tracks to RetroPower where all the employees could thrash the car around the track and whoever got the fastest time ended up winning the car. And luckily for me there was no ex-racers there, so the times are reasonably close and it was a really good day and all the guys there really loved it. Well, a few videos back again I also told you that Cal rang me up or contacted me after the event and said would I be interested in coming down to their other premises called The Den to bring all my tracks back there, because in January they're having another do where there's members of the public this time, and he really wanted all 3 slot car tracks there with a range of cars so they could do the whole thing again, racing cars and so on. So that I don't know what's going to be involved with regards prizes or anything, I don't know if there's anything like that, but he wanted all the guys to have a really fun time racing all the cars around my tracks, and I said I'd absolutely love to. So I needed a range of cars. Now Cal and I had a little discussion back and forward about what cars I should get, and I've come up with these. Now this is a thank you video to my subscribers that have donated cars to this channel, because almost all of these cars have actually been donated to me, and you've really saved me because these cars are absolutely ideal for this competition or this venue or this event in January, because there's certain cars here that are very robust. There are certain cars here that Cal asked for specifically, and then the other cars, the really high performance racing cars, one of them at least was given to me, the other one I had to buy. Anyway, I digress. So what I want to do in this video is I actually want to restore this car here. Now this was also a donated car and I love it. Now I've been waiting for the right moment to restore this car, and now is the right time. But what I'll do is I'll just show you these cars very briefly now, and then I get these 3 cars here which I haven't shown you yet onto my table and I'll show you all about those. But first of all, so this is my Porsche that I picked up from my club mate at my club. Very good price, goes like an absolute rocket. So that's going to be a racing car, and then this one here, well, I'll tell you about this one in a minute, but this is going to be its counterpart. So there'll be 2 full-blown racing cars. Then we've got these 2 Metros here because Cal specifically said he wanted a sort of a nostalgic Mighty Metro round within this competition in January, and he said I'd love a pair of Metros, and that's where you guys came in. You gave me a box of Metros. I went, took them all apart, cleaned them all the parts, put all the parts back together again to make 2 really good cars, and I've got 2 really good cars here now. So again, thank you for that. We've got the Mack donated or bought actually Escort Mark 1 that I use as a drift car. However, this car here, which I haven't shown yet, but I will in a minute, that could be a really good substitute for a drift car. I'll show you that one in a second. And then we have the Audi, which again was a donated car, and I've already tuned this. This car's already been to RetroPower, ran really well around Rickard Valley. So this one's going back to RetroPower or to the Den, but it's going to be partnered with the Alfa, which again, that's part of this video. That's the main bit of this video. So we got these 2 together, these 2 together, these 2 together, and then these 2 together. So with all that explained, let me get these on my table and I'll show you what I'm doing or what I've done or what I intend to use with these cars for. Okay, so let's start with these Metros. Now I have shown you these Metros on the channel before. However, when I showed them to you, they didn't have wing mirrors. Now because these cars are going to be thrashed around the track by basically members of the public, and these cars are quite tippy and prone to rolling over, I don't think that the wing mirrors are going to last very long. So obviously going on the internet and buying wing mirrors at a moderate cost, that's not really going to be an option. I want to be able to change these wing mirrors very easily without having to sort of break the bank doing it. So what I did is I went back on my 3D printer and I've made these. Now these are exact replicas of the original rear view mirrors that came with the car. And as you can see, I've made a sprue of 4 of them, enough for 4, a sprue of 8 of them, enough for 4 cars. And it says Metro on there, so we know what they're for. They are slightly profiled. They do have a little bit of a profile to them. And these are going to be nice and easy to replace when these ones get broken. And I won't mind at all when the wing mirrors get snapped off, because I do like wing mirrors on my cars. I think it adds a dimension. So obviously I've made them now. I've printed them off. And if you're interested in buying any of these, they're actually available on my website right now. Okay, so these 2 are going to be my drift cars around Unit 8, as it's called. Thank you, Matt, for calling it Unit 8. You know who you are. Anyway, so these are my 2 drift cars. Now, this is my beautiful Mark 1. I've restored it. I love it. It goes extremely well. And as I said before, I've left these slightly old and slightly past it tyres on it because it suits this car really well drifting around that Unit 8 track, and it's a really nice car. But obviously it's a very nice car to me. It's a very nice car anyway. I don't know if I want it driven all day long by all sorts of people and possibly getting damaged. So what I've done is I've gone into the donations box that you guys very generously gave me, and this is another donated car to the channel. Now I've given it a bit of a polish up, added a little bit of super glue across the side, which I rubbed down with some 3000 grit wet and dry, and then give it a polish with some car polish and some cutting compound, and it's come up pretty well. I'm very, very pleased with it. It was missing its rear view, its rear spoiler. However, again, I've been on the 3D printer and I've created a brand new 3D printed spoiler which suits these high impact cars, goes straight on. It is quite a stiff fit, and that was deliberate, so a little bit of a sanding down on the inside faces of the wing would be a good idea. Then it'll push down really hard and it'll lock into the back of the car, and I think it looks absolutely fine. And again, I'm actually selling these on my website as well as another little product, because as I said to you when I got the 3D printer, any little projects that I make on it, I don't want to hold them back from people. You know, you might want to use them, you might not, but I want you to have the option. So if you want to buy one of these spoilers, they're actually on the website now anyway. But back to this car. So this car is absolutely fantastic for the drift because these tyres are not the best, but they're not completely worn out. And they're actually really, really good level of grip on that Unit 8 track of mine. This car drifts absolutely fantastically, just as well as my Escort. It's absolutely, there's just the right amount of slip for this car to really go around the corners drifting and have a really controlled drift. It's fantastic for that. The gearing is nice. It's really smooth gears. It's a really, really good car. So thank you to whoever donated this car to me as well, because this is really going to be a great car. So I have actually upgraded it ever so slightly. What I've done is I've put in brand new wires. I've gutted all the wires inside, taken them all away, and I've just got 2 straight silicone wires from the motor straight to the guide. And as you can see, I've changed the guide as well. That's no longer a Scalextric guide. That is actually a Scale Auto guide that I put one of my little shims in there so I can use different guides. And I popped the Scale Auto guide on there, got it all set up, got some 0.3mm copper braids, which are good enough for this car, and it goes really, really well. So this car has been completely revamped now into a fantastic drift car. It really does go incredibly well around that little Unit 8 track. It drifts equally as well as the Escort. So these are my 2 drift cars. Now these are going to be my 2 out and out race cars. Again, I've shown you this one on the channel before. This is the car that I bought from my clubmate. I've retuned it to go around Crow Valley because it was tuned for really fast speeds around a much bigger track. So I've geared it to appropriately and I've tuned it up. And this one is a really, really nice car. Goes really fast and it's really cool, which is one of the specifications Cal wanted for these cars. He wanted cool cars, and this is a cool car and it goes extremely well. However, this is the car that you haven't seen on the channel yet. Now, I did a little bit of work for Rob Sale, the Rob Sale YouTube channel, where I took one of his old BMW Minis and I turned it into something that was very usable, because when he brought it here, he wasn't too happy with it. So he said, you do the work on my Mini and I'll give you this Scale Auto Viper. Now that doesn't sound like a very good deal for him, but he assures me he didn't pay very much for this car. And because it was so cheap, he bought it on a whim. And a few months after the event, he's not so enamoured by it and he's quite happy to let it go. It's just taking up room in his collection and he didn't really want it anymore, and he was happy to give it to me in exchange for doing up one of his BMW Minis, and there we are. So I ended up with this really awesome Scale Auto Viper. Yes, it's only a home series car, but they're still very, very high quality. Now I haven't done anything to this car whatsoever, but I'm not going to make a video on it because I don't think it's particularly interesting. It's just going to have a very, very light setup, a bit of a tyre tune, replace the braids, make sure the guide all works properly, and there we are. But you'll probably see this one thrashing around the RetroPowered when we're at RetroPower in January anyway, so hopefully the guys will video this one going around as well. But this is the car that that was given to me, or sort of lightly exchanged, a little bit of work from Rob Sale. So this is my racing car. And the main meat of this video. these two cars, or at least this one mostly, with a little bit on this one. Now these two were both donated to me, and these have been a really good donation to the channel, because this one's already been to RetroPower and has already been lightly tuned, but this one is a car that I absolutely love, and I was thinking about buying one of these anyway, and then one suddenly was given to me. So this is the car that we're going to have as partner to the Audi at RetroPower, and this is the car that I've been waiting to tune. As you can see, it's got nothing going for it at the moment, but that will all change in this video. And I'm also going to retrospectively do a little bit of work on this one as well to bring both of these cars back up to full spec. So this particular car here, I'll take the bottom off. I've already shown you the bottom of this one, but I've done a little bit of work on this car already. Not a lot, but just a little tiny bit. And that's mainly just to sort of get a little bit of reliability to it and just change the gearing and make it a little bit nicer to drive. And it does that extremely well. See, I've fitted a little plug in there for the lights as well. So here it is here. I've added a little bit of weight. I've added a 27 tooth slotted gear on the rear, a brass pinion gear, a brand new 20,000 motor, and I've got SRC rear tyres. Now these are the tyres that I used to use for rally racing, or I do use in fact for rally racing, but these are X tyres. When we did a race, an SRC race, they gave us all handout control tyres. So I took the old tyres off my old car, put those ones on, and then these ones became surplus. So these have actually done some laps already, but they work superbly well on this car. And I've also put some brass spacers in the corner just to control the end flow of the axles. So this is the specification that I want to bring this car up to. Oh, sorry, one other thing is I changed the lighting. I took out that metal thing in the middle, stuck an LED in the end of these tubes, insulated it all with a bit of heat shrink, put a little micro plug on there, and now this car's got really fantastic lights. They're all LED and they work extremely well. Again, that's what I want to do to this Alfa here. So I want these two cars to be an exact match. So this particular Alfa here, now it's a little bit tricky to get the back end off. It won't be by the time we finish this video. There we go. Right. So as you can see, I've done nothing to this car. It needs a bit of a clean. The tyres are completely shot. I don't have the proper front wheels for it. These well, actually that tyre there is half hanging off, but as you can see, that one there looks like it's a Lamborghini wheel. Tyre's completely gone. This tyre doesn't fit the wheel, and the wheel doesn't fit the car, but the back end looks absolutely spot on, but I've only got one pair. So in this video, I want to actually mould a brand new set of wheels out of resin, and then use those resin cast wheels on the front, as well as a whole host of other things. So let me just pop the Audi to one side. So that's our reference. So there is our very, very nice Alfa 155. I'm not going to repaint this car. I'm going to keep it exactly as it is, although I will be repainting the interior, because I think the interior used to be grey and it's kind of faded to this sort of brown, which I'm not enamored with. So I'm going to do a dark grey dash, dark grey parcel shelf with probably a black interior, and that will be all I'll do. I may paint the rear view mirrors black, perhaps, just to bring a bit of colour to the body, but that'll be basically it. So this is our car, our starting point. So what parts am I going to use in this car? Well, like I said, I'm going to copy the Audi anyway, so it's pretty much a duplication of the parts in the Audi. So we've got this Pendle Slot Racing
20,000
AC4 motor. These are really, really good motors. Love them. They go really, really well. So we got that. We've also got another slotted 27 tooth brass based crown gear, so we're going to be using him as well. These are most of them come out of my parts bin that I've got, so that's that. I'm then going to fit a 9 tooth brass pinion gear. I'm not sure what brand this is. I think it might be slotted. I can't quite tell. Maybe you can tell me in the comments. This has been pre-used, but there's nothing wrong with it. It'll still go extremely well. So that's my pinion, 9 on a 27. And then, as I said before, I've got these used SRC rear tyres. These were the control tyres because we ran a couple of cars, so I've got a couple of spare tyres. These are identical tyres to the Audi, so I'll be using a pair of those, and they fit the Scalextric wheels pretty well. And if they don't fit these particular wheels, I'll make them fit. And to keep things all exactly the same, I've used standard plastic bearings in the back of the Audi, so I'll keep the plastic bearings in the back of this Alfa, but I will be putting a hardened axle in it. So these are much better axles. They last a lot better than a standard Scalextric axle in my opinion. They run a lot straighter, and that's what the Audi's got. So we're going to have a high quality hardened steel axle in the back of this car. And you know I can't resist a Slotting Plus standard guide. So we've got a standard guide set to go in this car also to match the Audi. Now, one thing the Audi hasn't got that this Alfa will have and will retrofit to the Audi is a solid brass axle, a solid brass tube for the front axle. Now that is a very, very worthwhile upgrade. It stops all the pitching and diving in the corners and makes the car very much better to drive. So we're going to fit a brass tube to the front of this Alfa, and then we're going to retrofit the same brass tube to the Audi when we get to that point. And because fitting lights is such an easy job and a very, very effective visual effect on the car, we're going to fit LED lights into this Alfa exactly the same as the Audi. And also, there is the missing front headlight pod. Now, with regards to these pods, because this car is a little bit of a pain to get the body off with that rear pod on the chassis, I'm going to take that pod and this pod, I'm going to fit them into the body permanently, and then we're going to run the wires in the shell with a plug on it, the same as the Audi, and then when you take the body off, you just unplug the lights, and all this extra plastic here that we don't need will all come off the chassis. It'll help with the center of gravity, and that will be a lot better for unplugging the lights. Now also with regards weight, I will be measuring the weight of the Audi, this one here obviously, and then whatever weight this Audi is right now, by the time it's got its brass tube on there, I'll match the exact weight on this Alfa as well. We'll put some lead straight down the sides and get this car matched exactly to the Audi. So these are all the parts that we've got to get this old Alfa Romeo 155 up and running to match the Audi. So let's hit the bench, let's turn this car back into a viable slot car so that we can take it to the den and give it a good thrash. So here we are on the workbench, ready to start this chassis, and I apologise for the background noise in those last two segments. We're in the middle of a storm and I got a bit of a schedule to keep to, so I just had to go and record those two parts in the rain. But never mind, it's not raining now, so it's nice and quiet. So here is the chassis we're starting with, and as you can see, it needs a little bit of work. Now this video isn't going to be a full in-depth how to completely resto mod this car. This is just literally going to be a light tune, a bit of a cleanup, and get the car back on the track in a usable, functional way. So it's not going to be a full in-depth. So to that end, I'm going to do a lot of this in kind of stop-start kind of motion as I'm going. So I'll kind of skip over a lot of the really fine detail, but if you want fine detail, then that Escort build that I've just done, that takes you a fair way into detail. So as I pull off these wheels here, now what we actually want to do is keep this front axle, because this front axle is going to be used in this build on the front of the car. So we'll keep him, but we'll also keep these wheels for something else. I mean, the tires, they can go in the bin, but the wheels themselves are very, very useful, especially this Lamborghini wheel. If not, to make a resin mold of that wheel face, and I can make wheel centers out of it, if nothing else. So always useful to keep all these old parts. So that's the front wheels gone. We'll get rid of the back axle for a moment. Actually, no, what we want to do is we want to keep these back bearings as well. So we'll pop those to one side. Now keep these because I want to use these in the build as well. Now that will go in the spares box. Sometimes these can be bent, so just keep an eye out for that. And this is the wheel we absolutely want. Now I've not come across this before, because the tire is actually, to get this one here because it's easier, the tire is actually sort of, well, actually it hasn't. I thought that it had. I thought the tire had welded itself to the rim, but it hadn't. But this one kind of almost has. It's really hard to get off. So what I'm going to do in this, I don't need this wheel particularly, well actually I do, don't I, because it's got to go on back on the car. So let's just cut that tire and see if I can, oh yeah, right, okay, but it has kind of stuck itself to the wheel, but it's off now, so that's all good. So I thought that was going to be a fight. Now this I want to modify. Now we don't need these front towers because I'm going to put the light pods into the actual body of the car. So we'll just crudely cut this off now, and I will come back to that later on with the Dremel and just clean up those. Now the back end, I can't quite work out how that light cluster comes off. I'm sure it's clipped into these outer verticals, but so I can't really get it out nicely. So because I'm putting this cluster in the body, we don't really need to worry about getting it out nicely. So we'll just cut that, and we'll cut that there, and then we'll find out together how this was actually held in when that is liberated from the chassis. Now, crumbs, it still doesn't want to come out. Right, okay, so let's cut it again. And let's try and force that bit of plastic there out. Oh, I see, right, so that plastic was part of this rear piece. So we're going to have to cut back through here. Ah, there we are, that's just pinged off. And then as you can see, there's a little bit of a spur on there, but we don't need to worry about that. We can get that gone as well. And we're going to get this one gone on the opposite side. So now we just ended up with that block. And if we can just trim that down a bit more, it'll save us having to do too much Dremel work later on, because we don't need any of that. There we are. Right, so that's the chassis done there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the tops of those plastic rivets just with a scalpel there, and we should be able to just pull these completely out, because we don't need these where we're going, and that clears the chassis. Right, so there we are. So now all I need to do is pop my rear lens to one side nice and safely, put these wheels in the same place, sweep my desk, and we're going to scrub-a-dub-dub this chassis. Okay, so that's the chassis all cleaned up and stripped out of all the bits and bobs that we don't want. And as you could see, I took a great big hole out of the rear mount, because that's just excess weight we don't need, and we can take all that weight and stick it down here in lead where it's far more useful. I also drilled a hole through where the magnet was, because it's easier to push the magnet out. It also forms a nice little riveting point for the lead. When I put lead in there, I can countersink the top of that, and the glue will squeeze out through there and act like a sort of a rivet to hold the lead in. So we'll put lead in there afterwards. The front end is all cleaned up as well, and we've taken away these posts and the posts on the side and the mount there for the rear lenses. So we've got a really clean slate now, all ready to move on to the next stage of the chassis. But I think because these wheels are going to need time to dry up in the rubber molds, I think we'll crack on now and we'll get these pair of rear wheels into a little mold so we can take a casting from them in resin and use them as a nice fresh pair of front wheels. Okay, so we have all our parts, and as you can see, the casting of the wheels all turned out perfectly. This is the cast one, this is the original. As you can see, they look exactly the same from the back, apart from my cast one is grey and it's been sprayed black. But it saves having to pay the postage and wait for eBay sales. It'd take about a week for these wheels to turn up if I got them on eBay. If I cast them up myself, well, I can get them done overnight, and it makes life a lot easier. So we got our front wheels now, as well as our back wheels. So the processes that I did in that little video, I cut my axle down to length. I worked out what the length it was and I chopped it down in the same method I've shown you before. And I've also ground in these little lands on either end. They're a few thou thick, or deep should I say, and that's so I've got somewhere for the glue to go when you push the wheel on, because these old wheels, they're a little bit stretched, they don't really go on the wheel particularly well, so they go in about 7mm deep. So what I did is I measured out 7mm on the axle, and then I put a bit of tape on there, ground my land in the middle of the wheel. So now when I put a bit of super glue in that wheel and pop the axle in, the super glue will go in that little land and it'll glue the wheel on really, really well. And then as you also saw, I made up these spaces as well. Now these need to be 86 thousandths thick. So I cut them off with the lathe a little bit over length, and then I cut them down to 86 thousandths of an inch exactly. That one's done, and that one is exactly the same. There we are, 86 thou. And the way that I do is I cut them about 5 thou too long, and then I put them on a bit of sandpaper, a bit like this, and then I just put them on there and I just rub them down like that. Keep measuring them until they come down exactly right. So there's always one ground face and then there's one machined face, and they are to space out the axle to stop the end float. And I've measured all this against the Audi to make sure it's all identical. So all we really now need to do is just assemble this whole car together. So the way that I like to assemble my back axles is put the bearings in like that, put your axle through, and then snap the whole thing down together, and that ensures the axle is a really nice free fit. And we can drop the gear in as well, just like that. And because I've done all my workings out already, I know that all these fit. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little bit of oil just in here, because when I glue those wheels on, they're not going to come out again, but if I do get a little bit of glue oozing past, they won't go into the bearing and mess up my my bearings. I'm going to put the smooth face on there first. Watch a little bit of oil squeeze out. I put the smooth face on that side as well, and then there we are like that. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the axle and just make sure it goes into that land, and then put a little tiny dot on the edge of the wheel, just like that, and then watch it go in, and with a toothpick just sort of manipulate it in there, maybe a little bit more, not too much though, don't want to go too mad with this. And there we are like that. And then we should be able to pop that in there and just squeeze him all the way in. There you go, like that. Let the air out. Now that's gone a little bit poppy like that, so we can just take a little bit of the glue off, and there you are, that's done. Now all the oil is stopping that bearing from being jammed up, and we can do exactly the same on the other side. A little bit of oil, not too much, and then a little bit of oil in the bearing, and then on the wheel, sorry, and then drop that in there like that, and then push the wheel on like that. So you heard the air expel out. Mop up any excess glue, and then feel the backlash. Just adjust it ever so slightly. There's a bit too much there. Just adjust it up there. I think that is just about, there you go, spot on. There we are, and that will now glue up nice and solid. Okay, so that's that, and as you saw, I've put the pinion on. Small confession, I ended up changing the pinion for a brand new one, because that used one, it was a little bit slack on the shaft. I wasn't that convinced that it was going to stay there solidly for an entire day of thrash, so I popped a new one on just for my own peace of mind. So now we can pop the motor in. Quite tricky sometimes getting these motors in, but there we go. Right, it's in. There we are. So now you can see with these brass spacers, that's actually stopped the axle from moving all over the place, because we've got very, very little engagement in the motor. But it doesn't matter, because we've got the back axle under control with those brass shims. And then all we have to do then is simply nip up the gear, and that is the back end pretty much done. As I pop on these tyres, and they do actually fit. I don't need to do anything with these tyres to fit the car. They're 100%. And pop the other one on as well. And there we are, and that is the back end completely done. And I've already measured the width of the car. It's absolutely identical to the Audi. In fact, I can show you, because I got the Audi right here. And there we are. They are absolutely identical in width. They are 100% the same. And I do believe, actually, no, they're not exactly the same chassis. No, they're not. They're quite different, but the actual measurements are the same. Okay, so because this is the quick and dirty slot car build, I'm not going to go into extreme detail. So all I'm going to tell you is that the front axle is actually in the correct place when it's actually up against its stops on the inside of the chassis. So you don't need to think too much about getting this front tube in. just know that a pair of M6 nuts on your setup plate, supported with that axle just like that, brings the bottom of the car exactly where you want it, with the wheels on and the body on. And I've already done the workings out, and that just happens to be the exact place we want it. So what we're going to do is we're going to scratch up a piece of this brass tube so it's all nice and scratched, and then we're going to scratch up the chassis as well, so we've got a good key between these two parts. And you don't have to be particularly fussy about this, you just need to get a decent amount of key in this chassis, so when we put that car body filler into the actual chassis, it's going to really bond it well. So give it a good old scratch there. I've got a fiberglass pen as well here, which really gets into all the little fine bits of detail. And then we can go back again and really give it some aggravation with the old scalpel, and that should be good enough. So what we now need to do is we now need to pop that axle. No, we won't do that actually, we'll just skip through to mixing up our car body filler. So this is just ordinary car body filler, or Bondo as the Americans call it, and we'll just put a little bit of hardener in there. That's probably want a bit more than that, to be fair, and get a little bit more, just like that. And I want to give it a good old mix so it's well mixed. And there we are, that should be good enough. So then we want to get yourself a nice big dollop of this mixed car body filler, and we want to drop it into the chassis. And in this particular case, we want to go quite high in the chassis because it needs to gather up quite a decent space. So you may need to just employ the use of a toothpick to pull that filler down. Don't go mad with it, you don't want to make a mess, but you do need to get the filler in there. Now I think that is going to be perfect as our stage one. So next, pop your tube onto your axle, and then put the axle in place and then snap it down. Oh, that's tight. Let's try again. Ah, there it is. Right, finally. So once you've got your axle and tube all sunk down into the car body filler, set up your nuts, lower the whole chassis down, and there you go. That is it. It's all settled down beautifully. So now what we can do is just come over the top of that tube just to gather up that filler and to encapsulate that brass tube. And that is basically all we need to do until the filler dries. Okay, so that's the front axle of the Alfa Romeo completely finished. And as you can see, my reproduction resin tyres fit perfectly and roll perfectly straightly. And also I found a pair of Ninko front tyres which fit these wheels perfectly. So that is the front axle all buttoned up on the Alfa. And as you can see, I also did that little axle trick to the Audi as well. So now the Audi is ready to go. And you'll notice the Audi has got some brass shims where the Alfa doesn't, and that's simply because the Alfa doesn't need them. The chassis is exactly the right width to get the edge of these tyres exactly in line with the front arches of the body, so no need to make spacers for this car. Right, so now we've got the front axles done on these cars, we can pop the Audi to one side again and then move on to fitting the front guide to the Romeo. Okay, so for the sake of all my normal viewers and to save repetition, I'm going to race through fitting this front guide quite quickly. But just for the guys that have not seen this channel before, I'm going to be using my tool. This is the reaming tool that I make to fit these Slotting Plus guides. And if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you know that I love these guides. Now these have got a very, very slight draft, as we call it, which is a taper on that post there, and that needs to be cut quite specifically. So I make this tool to do that, but all my normal viewers have seen this a million times before, so I'm going to skip through it. If you're interested in what I'm doing here and you've not seen me do it before, if you go back to pretty much any of my other videos, you'll see me in detail showing you this. There's also a video dedicated to using this tool. So let's crack on, let's get this front guide into this car, and then we can move on to actually painting the interior. Okay, so now we got the black interior all done and the subtle grey dashboard looking quite good. I think it's now time to turn our attention to the LEDs. Now, I have seen it said that fitting lights into a slot car can be a bit of a problem with space confinements and everything else. I don't find it a problem. Now, I normally use these 3mm LEDs, and if I can't fit a 3mm LED in it, like in the case of the XJR9 build, I actually use these LEDs. Now, these are absolutely microscopic. And compared to a 3mm LED, you can see just how small they actually are. They really are very small. And in the case of the XJR9, I had the back tyre about 1mm of gap and then just the thickness of the body. And that's where these LEDs really worked, because as you can see, they're literally the thickness of the plastic. Hopefully that's coming through. They are literally the thickness of the plastic. So you can put them within the confines of the plastic body itself, and you've got yourself a light. And because there's got very, very long cables, you can then route the cabling anywhere you want. And if you haven't even got room for the cabling, you can mill a little groove in the body, and you can sink the cabling within the body. Or you could even stick some copper foil tape on the body and then solder it to that and run the copper foil tape around the inside of the car. That would also work. So I buy all my LEDs from a guy on eBay, and he's called Bright Components. Now, he doesn't even know I exist, so this is no promotion, but I just find his eBay listing very, very good, because he lists all the LEDs, and there's also a really good chart on there showing you what resistors to buy for your LEDs. And when you get your LEDs, you get this little handy little piece of paper, so if you do forget, you got this in your little packet to remind you. And then the way that I connect my LEDs to my car, if I'm separating the LEDs from the chassis, is I use these little connectors, these strip connectors. I don't know what these are called, I can't remember. I'll put a link in the description below to where I get mine from, but they're basically just standard electronic components. And all I do is I chop off two there, I chop off two here. You may need to waste a little bit of this strip here in the case of this long one, but who cares? They're so cheap, it doesn't matter. And then you can just use it like that. You got yourself a twin connector just there, and off you go. So in terms of fitting the LEDs to these rear strips, I don't always find that simply fitting an LED straight into the back of it where you used to have the filament bulb to be particularly effective. So what I often do is I often drill out a hole at 45 degrees or so on either side of the fitting and sort of point the bulb in the general direction of the opening. Now, this particular one here, it's got a couple of openings there where you put the little ferrules for the wiring. So I think what I might do is I might just sort of use that as a guide, or perhaps not. Anyway, you can use it as a guide to go straight in, and then you can just aim your bulb that way there, and that will actually be perfectly good. There'll be plenty of light, because the direction of the light generally on LED comes out forwards or 15 degrees either way. So as long as you point it in the general direction, the intensity of the light will go in that general direction, so you'll be okay on that one. And in the case of the front one here, exactly the same. I should just get this clear bulb. I should use that little hole there, and I shall start that. And as you can see, if I start in that hole there and go forwards, it's literally pointing straight to the light. So the wire that I used for hooking up these wires, these LEDs, is this. I think it's like 32 gauge silicon wire. It's incredibly fine, does the job. I have used the motor wire in the past, the 26 gauge. It's a little bit heavy. I find this much finer stuff to be easy, and it's very, very easy to get on eBay. It's very, very cheap. Big rolls of it cost you almost nothing. So, and then once I've got the LED in my little pocket here, what I do is I wrap the enclosure here in some silver foil aluminium tape, and that sort of keeps all the light in, stops all the light bleed. And then once we've done all of our LED work, I shall simply put it in there, put a little bit of hot glue in there just to hold these pods in place, and there you are, we're done. Okay, so let's think about getting all these LEDs into this car, so then we can get the weight matched the Audi, and then we can take it to the track. Oops, I forgot to tell you, there's also another option for lighting as well, and this works well in certain circumstances, and that's fiber optic cable. Now this is 2mm in diameter, and I don't know if this is coming through on camera, but that end is glowing bright red, and you can stick an LED on one end. You can push this through the car and then pop it out on the back end of the car, and you've got some really good rear end lights. I use this on the Bentley build, and it's very, very effective because it's very, very difficult to get subtle lighting on the back of that car. Whereas one of those micro bulbs, the micro LEDs, was way too bright. This is much more subtle and gives a much better pleasing effect. If you don't want anything too strong and the area is a little bit tight, you can always use this as well. So I have all my lighting in, all ready to go, and as you can see, I've got a little bit of black felt covering up any little apertures that might still be open to block out all the light, and I've routed my cable down the side of the car, and there is the plug all ready to go there. And also I rushed ahead and I've done all the lead work. I'm a bit naughty really, I know, but that piece of lead there was 4 grams. By the time I'd added that 4 grams to the chassis there and compared it to the Audi, I only needed that tiny little bit of lead down there. And as you can see, I drilled a hole into it just to fine tune it. So that's probably no more than about 1.5 grams down there. So we got this 0 there on the Audi. That's completely zeroed. Hopefully that's coming through in the camera. So now if we put the Alfa Romeo onto the scales, including the screw as well, we will see that the weight comes out at 0.08 of a gram heavier, which is absolutely nothing. So I'm happy with that. So all that's left to do now is to use some of Home Racing World's finest Sally Hansen's hard as nails varnish, glue these rear tyres on, then we can screw the body on and hit the track. So there we are, between this video and the one before it, you've now seen all the cars that I'm taking to the den to race in January. So don't forget, subscribe to RetroPower if you want to see the public racing these cars on Crow Valley in January. So back to the weight issue with my Alfa Romeo. So if you remember, I got the weights exactly right. But the only trouble was the Alfa was heavier in the body. It was 7 grams heavier in the body than the chassis. Not ideal really, although the overall weight was the same. Really wanted to keep the weight ratio the same as well. So the way I achieved that, after I did the track run, I went back into this car and just trimmed out all the glass. So the roof is usually full of glass in the older Scalextric cars, so all that got chopped out, and a little bit in the C-pillars as well, and that lost me 1 gram of weight. And then I discovered that the body itself wasn't too bad, but the actual interior was really heavy. It's 11.6 grams. So I got busy with the Dremel on the back of the actual interior, and I managed to lose the other 6 grams quite easily. And to be a little bit careful in the corners, take a little bit more off, but don't go through it. And that got me the 6 grams off, so together I saved myself 7 grams in the body, and that obviously then went back onto the chassis in lead, and then I was able to balance the chassis and the body all together to get it exactly the same as the Audi. And now she's spot on and runs beautifully. So I hope that you've enjoyed this sort of content, and if you have, maybe you'll subscribe, and if you could hit the little bell button, that would be awesome. So until the next time, thank you very much, and don't forget to subscribe to RetroPower.